If your approach to grip training for jiu-jitsu and grappling is simply don't use straps and do a couple of gi pull-ups, you need to really rethink and reconsider how you're approaching that aspect of your training, because you're leaving a lot of gains on the table. So today we're gonna just go through together a basic grip strength, forearm and wrist and elbow health type workout. This can be a workout that's done on its own, or you can obviously add it on to another upper body day, lower body day, or full body workout, whatever fits best into your schedule. Some of these moves are going to be best suited for just building raw strength in your hands, stopping someone's grip from escaping, or being able to hold your own hands together in a stronger way. That's going to be both kind of isometric strength in this direction as well as squeezing in this direction and that. These are all different types of grips, different ways that we're going to grab another person's body. And then many of these moves, while they won't contribute directly to building more raw strength in your hands, they're more for overall lower arm health and your elbow and wrist health, things like this, which is really all part of the same project of being a stronger grappler, more effective grappler, just because that will be a limiting factor to you at some point. If you don't have elbow or wrist pain now, it's a super common thing that can happen just as you increase the intensity and volume of your training on the mats when it comes to actual rolling, or when it comes to building stronger biceps, stronger arms, stronger lats, whatever it is, that could be a limiting factor eventually. So simply by training really to have really strong grip in a variety of ways, not just squeezing like a bar like you're already doing, but a variety of different kind of directions of force and different abilities of your hand and wrist, that in and of itself has a good sort of prehab/rehab effect. But then there's also some other things that we can do specifically to focus on that aspect. So if you're dealing with more elbow pain and kind of wanting to get rid of that and just being able to have more intensity in your training and not be held back by elbow pain or wrist pain, you want to focus more on those lower arm health type movements and maybe just one or two of the raw strength ones. If your elbows feel fine, I would still recommend throwing in some of the lower arm health stuff in there just to stay on top of that, because it's great if your elbows and wrists feel good and you want to keep it that way, because eventually they might not if you train a lot of jiu-jitsu. So let's get right into it. So the most obvious way to train your grip that most people are familiar with is simply hanging from a bar, dead hangs. This can be a great place to start, especially if you're low on equipment. We're going to go much further than that in this video, but it is a good starting place. There's a couple ways that I'd recommend you kind of spice up this type of training. Obviously, if you can't hang for a minute just from a regular bar like this, that's a good thing to build up towards. A lot of people are going to get there pretty quickly. It's not a hard and fast rule that you need to be able to do a minute dead hang before you can move on to other types of grip training. But that is a simple sort of standard that you should be able to get to, unless you're really big, and that could be more challenging and you can focus less on body weight type training. But that's a really good start, okay? From there, you can look at some fatter, thicker implements. Like here I have some fat grips. This can be a great way to add another dimension to just hanging from a bar. It's going to challenge more of your fingertips, and it's going to be a more realistic size grip, because if you're training with people your own size, you're probably not going to be able to like wrap your thumb around your fingers when you have a grip, and that's what these types of fat grips simulate. So that's really effective, building up more time on fat grip hangs, regular grip hangs. This is all just addressing this type of grip with something escaping your fingertips, which does happen in jiu-jitsu. Even though a wrist grip, a lot of times it's escaping that way. There's a lot of examples of grips that this type of strength, this sort of cup type strength will apply directly to, such as holding a kimura. Gripping the back of the neck is more fingertip, which is a fatter implements will apply to that. So it still is valuable and useful to do. To take this to the next level, you can add weight, or you can add a one arm hang. So just hanging from one arm. My hands are pretty sweaty, so this is kind of challenging for me right now, but you can hang from one arm, build up to a certain amount of time on that. My record is 1 minute so far, but I intend on going further with that. Some chalk is going to be really useful for this stuff if it's remotely warm and your hands get sweaty. My hands always get super sweaty. So you can do one arm hangs like so, hang out here, build up to this. It's really good for your shoulder, elbow and stuff to kind of deal with those distraction forces. But Don't do too much too soon. You can build up from a 2-arm hang to a 1-arm hang by starting with 2, switching to fingertips, switching to 2 fingers to 1 finger, and then maybe you can hold something that's really disadvantaged like this, where you're not able to use a ton of force on it. Then you can go here. Now for weighted single arm hangs, it's quite easy to just hold a weight like so. You can also use a weight belt like for weighted chin-ups, and this you can add more intensity. Once you're able to do maybe 30 seconds or so on one hand, that can be a way of building that up. And that just about covers hanging type training. You can use other types of implements like vertical grips, rolling thunder for hanging, but that's going to be pretty challenging a lot of times. It's going to be best to build up to that by using external weight, so you can build up to handling your whole body weight on some of these implements more effectively. So let's look at some odd implement training now to just address different aspects of grip that you won't be able to get simply from holding bars and from hanging from a bar. The first type of these implements that I'd recommend starting with, just because it really complements types of grip strength that you can build with more traditional gym equipment like bars, is going to be a pinch block. This is a simple block that looks like so, that you can pinch onto. I wish this one was a bit longer this way, because this does allow you to cheat by wrapping over. That would defeat the purpose. The whole point of this is to practice this kind of thumb and straight finger type of crushing strength, which might not seem like it applies really to grappling, but it really does. This is kind of going to help with just grabbing grips quicker, and it's really going to work your thumb. Plus, even if something doesn't directly mimic kind of types of grips that you have in grappling, it's going to be good for overall arm health. This one you definitely need chalk for. You can attach it to a pin of some kind. We're just making sure we keep straight fingers. We're not wrapping our finger around anything, and we're lifting like so. You can alternate sides. You can do it for time. I need more chalk right now. You can start with something you're able to hold for a decent amount of time and just hold it until it slips out of your fingers. You can build up to finding a weight where you're just barely able to lift it at all, like so. This is definitely going to be one where you're not able to use a ton of weight on, but it's really effective and quite helpful. So you can do that, and you can gradually build up the amount of weight that you're able to control in that way. The next type of implement that I think is really useful is like a rotating handle and thick grip type of implement. This combines the thickness of the grip and the rotation to really challenge the tips of your fingers in a way that simply lifting without straps or hanging from a bar won't really do. All you're going to do is use the same type of loading pin for this and just find a weight that's challenging. You're going to need to keep some wrist flexion with this, so it's also working your wrist strength as well as your finger strength. And this is a pretty easy weight for me because I just used the weight that I used for pinch grip, but you can start with a lighter weight, hold it for a long time, build up to a heavy weight that you can just barely break off the ground. It's really good for just building up strength and endurance throughout the wrist, cupping the wrist like this, which obviously super important for snap downs and things, and your fingertips. Another version of a similar style of implement that I really like, that's actually quite a bit harder to use with the same amount of weight. So if you're at like a home gym with very limited weight, this would be a better choice than that rolling thunder, is this type of device here. This comes from arm wrestling, but it trains pretty much that same concept of fingertip and wrist flexion. I think this is called a wrister twister or wrister untwister. Either way, I bought this on Amazon for pretty cheap. The key with this is that you roll it in the correct way so that it wants to unwind out of your hand. If I hold it this way, it wants to unwind into my wrist, and that's super easy to hold. Compared to this, it wants to escape my fingers. So you can see it in action real quick. It's not much to look at, but this forces you to curl and hold that. And right now it wants to escape out from between my thumb. So this one really forces you to use your thumb more to squeeze and keep that flexion throughout your wrist. I talked about them earlier, sort of straight grip style implements. Sort of like climbing a rope would be a traditional example of this. A lot of people don't have a rope in their gym. I don't have a high enough ceiling really to climb a rope, but I can still work that same type of grip strength in this way using a simple tool like this. You could hang up 2 of these and try to hang from them, or you can do the same thing I've been doing with this loading pin. And now you're holding a weight like this. This is obviously like wrist control, the way someone might be trying to pull straight out of your grip. And it's just another good way to train Your grip strength. Highly recommend you add that one in. That just about covers a pretty simple overview of a lot of your basic raw grip strength techniques. We've got hanging, one arm hangs, fat grip hangs. We've got the different implements. We've got rolling, thick type implements to lift off the ground. We've got pinch grip that's really gonna keep our fingers straight and use the thumb. And then we've got vertical type implements that are gonna try to fall out of your hand here. These are all based on isometric crushing type strength in different hand shapes, basically, and different amounts of wrist flexion. Now we can get into the topic more of elbow and wrist health. These are gonna be moves that are gonna be a bit more dynamic for the most part. They're gonna encourage blood flow and strengthen building some muscle in different areas. That's gonna help support lower arm health. If you just really go ham on a lot of this stuff that we just went over and grappling and things like pull-ups and stuff, you'll probably feel it in your elbows, and some of this stuff can help prevent that. So one really big bang for your buck option, if you have one of these kind of loopy bands here that's got some width to it, this is gonna allow us to train wrist extension with straight fingers. So we're gonna go into different wrist movements. However, wrist extension is usually kind of the most therapeutic one if you're dealing with this classic kind of inner elbow pain from grappling or from lifting, just because these are often undertrained muscles for a lot of people, myself included. It's kind of a workout even just to straighten your fingers and extend your wrist. I kind of feel a burn here almost instantly. It's because this stuff is so overtrained and this stuff is undertrained. So that's what I'm trying to reverse and what I'm trying to help you guys with. The problem with a lot of wrist extensions with a dumbbell that we'll go over soon, they're great, but they require you to grasp the implement, and thus you're never fully shortening these tissues here because closing your hand lengthens them. So you're shortening them through the wrist, but you're still lengthening them through the fingers. If we're able to shorten them through the fingers as well, we're gonna get the most shortening here possible, which is probably gonna help more. You can do that by using a band, wrapping it around your fingers like so, and we can just kind of do some rows or pull downs like so. I'm trying to keep my fingers extended and my wrist extended. And this is a really great way to kind of train isometrically the top of your forearm here and the finger and wrist extensors. So you can do that. This is a pretty great move to just get elbows feeling better. I use this to warm up a lot. So yeah, there you have it. Straight finger, wrist extension. There are devices that allow you to do this with weight, but that's pretty niche. This is a pretty applicable version that you can do. Now, when it comes to training the actions of your wrist, it's maybe slightly less important for actual jiu-jitsu performance than just the grip strength stuff that we went over, but it definitely does apply, especially for a lot of gi type techniques and finishing mechanics, but even no gi, some of your finishing mechanics will come from wrist movements in different directions. Your basic wrist curl, which you can do with a dumbbell, you can simply support your forearm on your thigh like so, or you can kneel in front of a bench, use the bench to support it. I just like doing it on my thigh. Try to get full extension of your wrist and a full curl like so. Sometimes, if it's hard to kind of have your forearm flat, you can tilt your whole body to the side a little bit until you get a little bit more of a straight up and down wrist movement. There's going to be a little bit of lateral curling to it, that's fine. As long as your wrist is more or less going up and down, like so. Pretty simple, right? I would start with a movement with a weight that you can do kind of 20 reps with and work from there. You can get heavier as long as kind of wrist and elbow comfort allows, and you can build up and get stronger with that. So that one's pretty obvious. A lot of people are aware of it, but still good to have in the rotation. For your basic dumbbell wrist extension, you're gonna probably use a good amount of a lighter weight. It doesn't have to be this light. This is just what I have lying around. This is a little too light for me, but a good place to start for a lot of people. Super light, moving up and down like so. Show you from the side, just like that. You can change the resistance curve based on how high your knee is and how far you're leaning back, right? This will be more of kind of like a preacher curl type position where there's a lot of strain at the end range because my elbow is below my wrist here. But if my elbow is above my wrist, there's going to be very little tension in the bottom. It's more going to be about the squeeze at the top. I like to just do a variety of these different angles, just to really get everything working in here. But this is a movement you can track and get stronger with over time, like any of your lifts. and it's gonna help your elbows feel a lot better. Okay, now let's look at radial and ulnar deviation. And that's basically this movement in each direction. A really simple way to train that is with a hammer or sledgehammer, and you can just use leverage. You can also simply, if you have these loadable dumbbells, you can take the weight off and go like so. So these are the two directions we're gonna wanna go in. Like that. Okay, pretty straightforward. We're just kind of moving the wrist sideways like so, just like with all of them. Maybe pick a bit of a lighter weight at first that you can do 15, 20 reps with and build up from there. Then the other way we can do it is simply holding your elbow up, your wrist up above your elbow like so, and this is going to allow us to train in the other direction. Now if you have these loadable dumbbells, you can do it like I'm showing, but you could also picture holding kind of like a long hammer, or you could use a broomstick or something, and you can change the resistance based on how choked up you are on that object. So we've just covered training the different actions of the wrist. The priority, I would say, for health and lower arm health would be wrist extension if you're dealing with problems. But I like to just train all of them. It's pretty easy to do, in the sense that they're pretty small muscles. You're not going to be like out of breath or anything doing this stuff, and it's worth putting the time in if you are a grappler. Let's look at one more really good option for training finger and really just finger extension. This is a really good method for building the finger extension in a way that you can really add or subtract weight from as needed. I'm using this vase here. You can use any type of jar. You can find different size opening. You could probably use an empty protein powder container or something like that, like so. This obviously allows you to place weight inside of it up to a certain point. This is fragile, so I've placed a little pad underneath it just so that I don't shatter this if I fail a rep. All we're gonna do is put some weight in here, put your hand inside, and actively hold the jar in place. This is really working your finger extensors. And you can find jars or containers with different size openings to find one that you're able to really spread your fingers in and still hold it in place. You can do this for time and add weight to really build up strength here. This is a really good elbow health option. Another good option for elbow health, wrist health, and overall kind of grip, hand and finger endurance is the rice bucket. This is a super popular tool among all kinds of different athletes that are very grip intensive, like arm wrestling, rock climbers, frisbee, things like that, things that take a toll on your wrist, elbows, and hands. All you need is a big bucket full of rice, and there's a few different things you can do with this. Number one would simply be opening and closing your hands in the rice. You can do this for a lot of repetitions. You can put your hands in deeper to get a little more resistance. And what's unique about this is it's resisting on each joint as you extend your hands. If you want to simply just work on the extension, you can stick your hands in, open them, and pull them out like so. Or you can kind of squeeze and open at the same time. You'll get into a rhythm like this and get a really big forearm pump. It's going to help your hands and fingers feel better. This stuff is super helpful for me. Another really good thing to do is kind of wrist rotations in here, so you can get your hands in really deep and just kind of do wrist circles in each direction until you're really feeling the burn. You can also add actual kind of elbow pronation and supination, so you're twisting and just getting rotations in each direction. Twisting, you can add a bit more resistance by kind of having straight hands if you're trying to really get the most out of this twisting action in your elbows. That's another really good option. You can also do these eye gouges, I call them, where you kind of imagine you're gouging someone's eyes out with your thumbs, and it will really pump up this thumb pad area. Again, all this stuff is just kind of good for bringing blood flow to the area and building some endurance here. I would highly recommend this as a finisher or just kind of a warm up when you're feeling crappy. Try to build up to being able to do more over time, but really just going based off of getting a big pump. I'm not too concerned with tracking a lot of metrics with this type of thing. Another really effective maneuver is the finger curl. And this one kind of fits into both categories. It's great for building up a lot of strength for performance, but it can also be used as a lighter weight, higher rep, kind of rehab and blood flow move. I really like to do this with a cable, but you can do it with a dumbbell as well, so I'll show you both options. So for finger curls with the dumbbell, we're simply going to let the dumbbell curl into the very tips of our fingers and then squeeze it up. I like to go with a no thumbs grip so my thumb doesn't get in the way. What's tricky is letting it curl to your very fingertips without it falling on the ground and then curling up. You can add in a little curl of your wrists at the end if you want, but we already trained wrist curls in one of the previous exercises, so I like to keep the focus on this hand. This is sort of like using those grippers, but I find it to be much more ergonomic and scalable than the grippers. Just like that. Pretty simple. You can do that with pretty high reps for rehab purposes, or you can really build up to kind of sets of 8 or 10 and use it for strength. I don't really like to go really low rep with it because it just feels like it's kind of unstable. It's such a small movement that, sure, if it's 8 or 10 reps, maybe that's a higher rep range for strength, but really each rep is so quick and so short that I find it doesn't work very well with really low reps. Let's look at it with the cable now, which is my favorite way to do it. When you're doing these on a cable, I would highly recommend you use something with like a rotating handle like this. Use something with a rotating handle like this. It's going to help you a lot. Something solid. In general, these types of handles are not my favorite for a lot of other cable exercises, but they're great for this one. Again, you can do this with a cable at different heights. If it's a low cable, obviously it's just going to look just like the dumbbell finger curl that we just did. I just happen to have this very rudimentary cable set up on my squat rack right now just because I have not yet built my little cable machine. I've been kind of doing a garage gym reorganization and I just made space for the cable machine, but I haven't built it yet. So that being said, I still like to do it with this vertical type setup because it allows me to get a little bit of stretch on my shoulder, and I'm doing a lot of stuff with weight hanging down and kind of putting a load on me, and it's kind of nice to get something a little bit more decompressing. Not that it really matters or makes a big difference in the long run, but it's going to be the same thing here. We're going to let the handle really uncurl into the fingertips and then squeeze and rotate. And what's nice about this, obviously, is we can really control the weight more precisely. I can add a half a pound on here if I want to, because it's just one cable stack compared to using a dumbbell that you need to load symmetrically. So yeah, this is a really good one. Finger curls, you can use them high rep, you can use them low rep. You're really going to get a pump in the forearm, and you're going to build up some stronger fingers and forearms there. Another set of movements that maybe aren't super useful for actual performance, but are great for overall elbow, forearm, and lower arm health is going to be the pronation and supination. We're going to do that with a belt. You can obviously do this with a towel or a band or something, but if you do jiu-jitsu, you probably have a belt lying around, so you might as well just use that. You can loop weight through the belt like so. Once you get to a bit heavier weights, it might be easier to use like a loading pin and a carabiner to attach to the bottom of this. However, you can get it attached. There's really two things that we're going to do with this. One is pronation, one is supination. Pronation is really simple. You're going to loop your thumb through here, make sure this goes across your knuckles. You're just going to rotate like that. Okay, if you find that your bicep is fatiguing before you get any real fatigue in this inner elbow area, which is where your pronator is, you can just support your forearm on something like so that it takes your bicep out of the equation a little bit and you're rotating. But most of the time, you don't really have to worry about that. You can just rotate like this. If you get a little bit of extra bicep work at the same time, then more power to you. Pretty simple. I would start really high rep with this because you don't want this to kind of wrench your forearm out of place and tweak your elbow trying to go for a super heavy weight at first. A lot of people lack a good amount of mobility in this type of movement, so that alone can really help avoid a lot of issues in the future. Then the other direction is supination, and there's two ways to do this. You can just hold it and kind of do like we just did. However, it's tough to get a lot of movement or resistance in there. I'd still recommend working on it this way, but I also recommend giving it a try in a side lying position. So let's look at that really quick. So we're here lying on our side on a bench. You can just get your elbow kind of stuck under you and your forearm supported on the bench here. I don't want it so far out that it's kind of starting to Americana you. I want your elbow tucked under you so that you're not getting that Americana pressure on your shoulder. Now from here, you'll notice you have a lot further you can go into supination. That feels like it's resisted and it's just a bit more effective. So this is how I prefer to train the supination direction. You can do pronation from here as well. I just find it's pretty convenient to just do that one standing. However, this one works out a lot better side lying. And that pronation and supination, building that up, building your endurance and your strength up on that, it's going to open up some more mobility and just get some more blood flow in here. It's probably going to be really good for how your elbows feel long term. So give those ones a try as well. So that just about covers a solid grip workout. I went through these pretty quick. Obviously, you'll spend a little more time on each one, but you don't need to do a ton of sets of these. 1 or 2 sets that are challenging, you can add them into another workout you're already doing, and you can make great progress that way. A lot of people don't work this stuff at all, so if you just start building it up over time, in a year you'll be way ahead of a lot of your training partners. Hope you found some value in this. If you want more valuable jiu-jitsu content for building your body up to be stronger and more resilient off the mats, as well as ways to build more skill in a more efficient way, less wear and tear on the body, more rapid progression, check out the link to my community program below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.